Peace. Peace, everyone. Sabbat Shalom. Sabbat Shalom. Okay, so it is fifth Sabbath of the month, and every fifth Sabbath we have a get my music set up. Sorry, my music. Okay, good. So every fifth Sabbath, peace, Sister Kashia, loud and clear. Good. Faithful, trusty sound engineer. Okay, so basically every fifth Sabbath, what we do is we have a presentation and we are going to Sabbat Shalom, Manira, Sister Manira. Sabbat Shalom, yeah, Akuya. Turn off all of these notifications. Yeah. Well, that your days are going well. So, like I was saying, every fifth Sabbath, we have Peace Ear Tracy. We have a presentation done by one of the members, and today is my turn. So, my name is Brother Antonio. I'm from the Bahamas, and today I just wanted to. Oh, peace to Chief Yuya. On my manners, peace, Chief. Peace to everybody in the chat. See all the niceties happening. What I wanted to talk about today is basically, trust. The act of trusting. Peace, Brother Vermon. Peace, Brother Zach. Uh, peace, peace, Naya. Peace, E.S. Sequoia. Okay, everyone's filing in. Yeah, but that trust piece, I wanted to speak about that because it was always a very important lesson that I had to learn. Learning to trust others and learning to trust myself. Peace, Baba Utu. And one of the things that prevents your ability to trust yourself and trust others is not having a firm rooting and grounding in your stance, or being disconnected from your vision. So, of course, Chief, peace, Baba Anwar, peace, Baba Haru. Um, Basically, Chief touched on this in several segments. Most recently, one of the Command the Day segments about following the Creator's vision and not just following, going along with what you think you should do. And it happens to most of us, right? A lot of us get off of our square, we get knocked off of our path a little, life kind of beats us down, and we tend to internalize lots of these external influences. Chief also spoke on a very impactful, at least for me, it was very impactful Command the Day segment on the 16th of October. It was fairly recent. And he spoke about not only enjoying your life, but the dangers of trash talk, right? Trash talking yourself. Peace, Sister Moksha. Trash talking yourself and trash talking, being susceptible to trash talk, which is like having a leaky boat, having water come into your boat. You want to keep that water outside of the boat, and you want to make sure you don't do things that would cause you to sink, right? You want to stay on path. So anxiety is something that comes along when peace you're precious. Anxiety is something that comes along often when you don't know where to put your trust. Right, like and share, Sister Kashia. Oh, and I can tell you in person now, I'm not in the chat. So yeah, like and share the videos. It not only helps to make the videos more visible, but it also helps, people who may benefit from the information, right? Which a lot of us have. I've definitely benefited from new information, from listening to Chief, and following instructions, following through, and seeing change in my life, especially when it comes to anxiety, right? So with the anxiety piece, I always had panic attacks when I was younger. I used to have a lot of panic attacks, but I'm from the Caribbean. I grew up in the Bahamas, spent almost my entire life here, and especially growing up. I don't want to be on my age or anything, but especially growing up in the time period that I have, there's a lot of not a lot of, but there's like ignorance about mental health. If you have a problem, then just suck it up. People would normally attribute it to personality, right? So they would say, "Oh, he's just shy," or "He's just he's not used to being around people." It wasn't really it wasn't really seen as anxiety. You know what I mean? And it's something that affects most of us, right? According to Mental Health Association, Mental Health Institute in the U.S., it's like, how much is it? Let me look at my notes. It's the most common illness in the U.S., mental illness, right? It affects 1 in 5 adults, which is a lot. It's a lot of people who walk around with anxiety. So where does this anxiety come from, right? Anxiety comes from worry. Like, right, brother Zach said, grab some water and take a knee and walk that mental health problem off. Exactly, or man up, like we're often told. Like, you can take it. Tough, right? Yeah, man. So, yeah, bananas. But you grow up and you learn that you're responsible for your own mental health, but you grow up and you take a lot of hits, and you tend to internalize a lot of the banana statements that people lob at you because they don't want to deal with it. You know what I mean? So it's a response to the stress, basically anxiety. It's a response to stress, and she says that's the solution to everything in the army. Just drink some water. Right. So drink some water, walk it off, you'll be fine. But yeah, it's a reaction to stress, and we all deal with stress differently. I'm not saying that stress in and of itself is a bad thing, but how we deal with stress and how it affects us, um, it manifests in different ways, which is what makes that anxiety thing so tricky. Because my anxiety may force me to, I don't know, it's not mine, it's just an example. It might force me to go in the corner and cry or ball it, curl up in a fetal position, put my thumb in my mouth and start rocking back and forth. Whereas someone else's anxiety may cause them to attack someone preemptively, right? Because there's different types of anxiety classifications in mental illness. There's social anxiety, there's, you have anxiety about social situations, you have PTSD, which is post traumatic anxiety. You also have GAD, generalized anxiety disorder, which you're generally anxious about everything. I've had certain situations where having, like, worrying about having a panic attack actually triggers a panic attack. So you can see how I think Chief touched on it on that command the day statement too. Oh, peace, Chief. Yeah, Chief says that's so true. My own children have gotten on me about telling them to just walk off their injuries. I counsel people daily, but sometimes you can miss things under your nose. We're all susceptible, right? Right. Um, if I A lot of times too, once the situation is past, usually only the person who got hurt in the situation may remember what happened, because there's an emotional impression that it leaves, and you can sort of store that in your subconscious mind, right? Um, I could bring up any situation where, please, brother Low, OG, triple OG, was good. Yeah, you could have a situation where a parent might say something very hurtful to a child, right? Very hurtful, very insensitive, and the child could walk around carrying that with them for years. Just like Chief mentioned in certain segments, like there are some people who've been uh, molested, some people who've been sexually assaulted, and they walk around with that for years, and it starts to influence and seep into every area of their life. And you could have a parent say something so insensitive and so hurtful to a child, and that could shape their whole personality. And if the child actually, gathers the courage to confront that parent about it, the parent would look at them like, "What are you talking about? I never said that." And that can be even more hurtful because it makes you, um, it fuels that avoidance behavior. You don't want to talk about it now because you almost try to convince yourself that your problems don't matter, your issues don't matter, and it's not really important what happens to you. And that's something that I definitely had to move through and navigate through. Brother Zach said PTSD can bring on a string of maladies. One of them is being very controlling, almost in a sense of trying to rewrite their own history. Right, right, exactly. When you have some people who would develop a level of OCD, you lock the door and then check to make sure that you lock the door 3 times before you go to bed, and it's very toxic on a person, mentally, emotionally, energetically, because you can imagine you check the door, check to see if you close the door every time you get out of the car, or you might have anxiety about locking your own keys in your car. So you do this series of checks every time you get out of your car. You might have 6, 7 stuff. Did they take the key out? Do they take the key out? Like to this day, sometimes I don't lock the door unless keys are in my hands and they're not in the car, and then I close the door. So peace, y'all, Lynn. Peace, Sister Dejo. Didn't see you come in. Peace. So yeah, one of the things that you can do, or one of the things that clinicians typically, one of the things that clinicians typically do to treat anxiety, PTSD, social anxiety is would be known as CBT, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy. And it helps you with your avoidance behavior. So you may have a fear of elevators. I don't know, you might be afraid of falling down an elevator chute and dying. Might have watched too many soap operas and seen too many people get fired that way. So now you're afraid of getting around elevators. You always take the stairs. And CBT allows you to not only, the first thing they do is educate you on how your brain works. And second thing they do is to therapy, like sometimes exposure therapy, where I would say, okay, just stand in front of the elevator. Maybe it might be a challenge to do just that. So after the first step is stand in front of an elevator, second step maybe to call the elevator, and you might hear it ding and run off screaming. And the third step may be to open the elevator, stand inside of the elevator, but not necessarily let the doors close. You take steps to get closer and closer to what it is you want to do, which is get over this fear of the elevator, right? Excuse me while I go through my notes. So the second thing is self-monitoring, right? Because usually, um, because your thoughts are moving so rapidly, they typically combine CBT with some form of medication to slow you down. But you could slow down on your own, like through meditation practices, or like Chief said in that video, getting around good counsel. Getting around someone, peace, Ricochet, getting around someone who actually wants to help you to stay in line with the vision that you have, right? Not the vision that you created for yourself, but the vision that the creator has put into you. Understand? So is monitor your behavior and your thoughts, and you would want to identify your triggers. So there are certain things that are triggering CBT. Brother Zach says CBT is one of the things that Chief had touched on, which the problem with it is they don't take into account the first eye. If my memory serves me correct, Chief. Okay. I guess Chief can correct you if you're wrong. Peace, Andrian. Peace to you. But yeah, that CBT is something that they don't necessarily take into account the first eye. They may give you medications that are damaging to the first eye. So it's good to combine the actual actions with meditative practices. It helps to balance that positive and negative. You might have too much positive or you might have too many things swirling around inside of your mind, right? Which is where the subconscious comes in. So what you would want to do, first thing I would say you should do is start a journal. Keep a journal anytime you have a trigger or you feel that little tingly feeling that you might feel before the anxiety attack comes on. Anyone who's ever had one would know what I mean. Or even if you feel yourself being stressed or overwhelmed, or someone said something that angered you or annoyed you, you want to be able to source where that anger is coming from, where that annoyance is coming from, and keep track of your internal community and learning to identify who's speaking, what's speaking, and if that's a part of you, or if that was some water that got into the boat, if that was a product of the trash talking or a product of the environment that you were raised in that you internalized, and now it's like a spy hiding on the inside of your community. So to take a little, breathing is important, Sister Kishio. Breathing is important. Many forget to breathe during these times. Yeah, yeah, especially if the attack like sets on, and they call it attack because you feel like you're being attacked, and you start hyperventilating. Your blood pressure rises. You can like you're gasping for air. So an important point is to breathe, regularly, and even breathing, keeping track of your breathing is important because you might be like, I'm breathing kind of rough right now because things affect us sometimes and we don't even notice it. You know what I mean? It's peace, Shamalis. Peace, Ia Sequoia. Peace, Sister Tracy. Oh no, I said peace to Sister Tracy. Chief says, yes, Brother Zach, cognitive is an important part. So especially journaling, as he mentioned, paying attention to how you think about what you feel, even more than what you feel is key. Right. Your precious says monitoring thoughts is so essential to the process beyond the reactive response. Right, exactly. So the journaling is a very, very powerful tool. I've had several journals in the past, whether it was keeping track of my waking thoughts or my night visions, dreams. I would always keep track of it and try to source like where does this come from or where does that come from, and it helps to keep your internal community in balance. Um, Balancing that intrapersonal aspect of yourself is also important. Intrapersonal meaning you're managing how one internal process affects another. So that's very important. So that's the first thing. And this is similar to like a ballistics test. See, now I got to control my breathing. But yeah, this is similar to a ballistics test where if you have a shooting or something like that and it's a crime scene and the police come to see who shot who, what bullet did they use, they also track the trajectory of the bullet. Meaning, if I can look at the angle where the bullet hit the ground, I can tell where the shooter was standing, and it gives me a better clue of where the bullet came from, why it came from there, if where the person was standing, matches up with the stories the witness gave, because depending on how much you've taken in and how much you've stored, you may have several different voices speaking. Brother Lowe said I would keep a journal just for future generations so they could know what I was thinking and feeling at that point in time. Exactly. I actually keep that in mind when I'm taking notes. I don't take digital notes like typing them up. I usually handwrite my notes because it was very powerful for me to discover my grandfather's or my grandmother's journal and looking at their notes and just seeing how they thought. And like, oh, okay, granddad thought that way too. It's very powerful and it helps you to keep legacy in mind. Um, Naya says, my primary journals are my daily journal and my dream journal. I used to write, then started keeping them on my laptop, but went back to paper about a year ago. It's good, Sister Naya. That's good. It's good for your memory as well. Like even the notes for today, I have handwritten because it helps me to store them. Like you have to process them through yourself as opposed to just typing them. You know, the letters are already formed as opposed to forming the letters yourself. Brother Zach said, I want to see Brother Lewis Library. Another joint off the chain. Yeah, yeah, I want to see it too. So when someone is emotionally distressed, the common question that a person who's on the receiving end of that distress may be like, where's all this coming from? You know, someone might miss a birthday. It usually seems trivial, and that's why you get that response like, someone might miss your birthday, or they forgot to pick you up from school or something like that, and you might just go off on them. It's like, oh, you never do this for me, you never do that for me, and it's like, where's all this coming from? What's the beef? Where's all this hostility? Yeah, I forgot to get you, but it's not that big of a deal. But it might be a big deal for you because of the information that you may have stored in your subconscious, which is another thing that I wanted to speak about, because that's where it's coming from. It's coming from that dark space where you've stored everything that's happened in your life, every experience, every sensation, all of that stuff is stored in your subconscious. And if you don't have a good relationship between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, then you're going to have a lot of difficulty with manifesting things. So that's a very important piece as well, and that's what the journaling helps you to do, because you may want to do something or say something, and for some reason you have this thought in your mind that's blocking you. It's like a giant boulder in the middle of the street between your conscious and subconscious, and it's very difficult to get around. It's very difficult to get under. You know, the Michael Jackson song, too high to get under, over, too low to get under. You have to get through it, and this is something that you have to chip away at once you've identified it. And some people don't. You know, that's saying the enemy and the elephant in the room. Some people don't get through it because they don't want to acknowledge it. So the first step is monitoring, acknowledging that there is a problem, identifying the problem, and then working on steps to actually move through the problem as opposed to moving around it or getting over it. As Chief would often say. Yeah, Alderay says, yes, Chief mentioned a few months back that the contracts we leave behind are key to legacy building, right? The oppressor said, I can see journaling for future generations, helping with the creation of contextual perspective. Yeah. Um, Baba Utu, oh, okay, everybody has a journal. Okay. Baba Utu says, that's pretty much how I truly learn, by scribing my thoughts or prayers, affirmations, learning languages, kaffa wa kaffa. Okay. All right. That's good. I do the same thing. I have several notebooks stocked somewhere. They're all over the place. They're like cheap school bars. They're hidden all over the place. Brother Zach says, I'll keep a ledger. Ledger makes me think it's more manly. Hi, Brother Zach. Brother Chris, what's up? Peace, peace. Uh, Brother Chris says, a successful merger between the feminine and masculine aspects of one's being. Yeah, yeah, and that's crucial. And the reason it's crucial is because if you don't respect what they are, you can you can sort of lose track of them, and people can sort of co-opt these internal interpersonal relationships. They can get you to do what they want just by manipulating you, seeing what triggers you. So you got to keep in mind, while you're monitoring yourself, there's people in your environment that are going to monitor you, and they're going to see what's the best way to manipulate you based on the weaknesses that you display, consciously or unconsciously. This is why Chief said the trash talking thing is so dangerous, because what's the object of trash talking? To get in your head. It's trying to um, dissuade you from taking responsibility for your presence in a certain space, and you wind up not really engaging your environment to the fullest. You're not enjoying life, as Chief would say. So Yeah, your subconscious is also something that you should really monitor. And a good way to do that is to see what triggers you and to understand that when you're triggered, it's not with malicious intent. When someone else is triggered, it's not necessarily with malicious intent, but it's an expression of something that they've held so long and they've stamped down so long that they have to find an outlet. They'll find the smallest reason, to let it out. And you can choose to respond to the feeling, or you can be compassionate and hear the person out and work with them to source where that emotion or where that feeling is coming from. So it's important to understand that relationship. Very, very important. It's crucial. And as Chief would say, um, Chief said in Heart, Mind, Words, it's a double edged sword. Your subconscious stores everything that you've experienced, um, and it uses that information that you've stored to look for danger and to look for opportunities. And one of the things with that is we may see opportunity in something that's dangerous, and we may see some danger in something that's beneficial. And that's where it gets tricky, but you have to work on wiring your brain almost. Um, so I'm going to show you a clip now, not a clip, but a slide of an excerpt from that book, Mind Hard Words. So let me know if you guys can see that. Okay, so the subconscious mind, right? You've got to know who's on the playing field. And that's sort of what I was speaking about earlier. Oftentimes we just don't know all the players who are on the field when we begin to explore our own thoughts. There is always a vocalization ringing beneath the surface of our conscious thinking, and that is the subconscious mind. It holds thoughts, desires, fears, and even truths that we often stamp down. So, to control, or rather observe, the true functioning of the left and right brain hemispheres, we first have to be able to regularize what the subconscious mind feeds on. So, what does that mean? What the subconscious mind feeds on? It means that whatever you take in, good or bad, you know how they say garbage in, garbage out. If you take in trash, if you're always surrounded by low vibrational people, if you're in an environment or on a job where you don't like your coworkers, your you don't like the people in the space, you don't like how they treat you, how they speak to you, and you're always on guard about how you move through that environment. Chief did a segment on how to move in a room full of vultures. You've got to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. The wise as serpent part is knowing who's on the playing field. You got to know who's in the environment, what their agendas are, to some degree, or to a great degree, what their emotional and mental deficiencies are, and how they're going to basically lean on you as a crutch to survive or function in the only way that they know how. They might only get energy from getting under people's skin, or they might get energy by being a people pleaser. Like, you've got to learn how to navigate around them. The issue is when you stay inside of a space like that for so long, it leaves an imprint on your mind, and you start behaving in different spaces, maybe even more sane spaces, the way you behaved in those spaces. And you might be looking out for arrows and bullets that might not be flying your way. Uh, yeah, Aldery says there's no disparity between what we think, what we say, and what we feel. The bigger issue is an issue of control. Right, and this is another quote from Mine Hard Words from Chief Yuya. Brother Zach says, all what you started with, and what Chief would say is very dangerous, is someone saying, get over it. Exactly. Just like Brother Zach says, it begins to grow in that subconscious, and you begin to water that flower without realizing it. You start cultivating it, and then it starts bearing fruit, and now you're wondering why your life looks so raggedy, or why you have so many disagreeable relationships is because you try to get over it rather than getting through it. Someone might say something that lets you know this isn't someone that I want to, deal with. But that anxiety might say, or it might come from a place of lack, and you might say, well, I don't really know if I'll have another chance like this. That trust talk starts coming in. I don't know if I'll have another opportunity like this, so I can't pass this up. I have to work with this person. If they're gonna be negative throughout the whole journey, or even if they may possibly swindle me, then I'll just have to get over it. You know what I mean? Which is very dangerous and self-defeated type of motion. And speaking of self-defeat, another thing that Chief mentioned on that enjoying your life segment is if you're not honest, if you're in an environment where you can't be honest with yourself, and if you're in an environment where you can't be honest with the people around you, then what's going to happen is you're going to start tearing yourself apart. He also spoke about this in a segment he did a couple of years ago on letting go, which is a really good segment. I definitely recommend it. If you have one foot in one world and a foot in the other world, then you're going to tear yourself apart, and it's going to be a very painful experience for you and for the people on the outside looking in, who don't have access to your subconscious mind. You're going to look crazy. You're going to look crazy because some days you're cool, you're talking about sports or it was on TV last night. And other days, you're talking about aliens and UFOs, and they're like, okay, you invested in this culture or you invested in your culture? You know what I mean? So right, Sister Kashia, it's on the Enlightenment Transformation YouTube channel. Ia Precious says, regarding that analogy, my question was just that. How long can we truly be in an environment where you have to employ such an approach? Exactly. You it's almost like being in quicksand. Like you've got to be wise when you're moving around quicksand, but you don't want to stay around quicksand. You might get comfortable and forget that it's quicksand. You might be going down and be like, oh, well, I'll just get over it. But I just lost a leg, but I'll be good. You know what I mean? So it's very dangerous. Brother Lowe says, right, you might not let them go because you don't know if you get a good one. If you'll get a good one again, it's cheaper to keep her. Yeah. Oh, you talking about women. I was talking about opportunities. Uh, Brother Lowe said, I love that segment too. Right, right. It was a good one. I've listened to that countless times. And again, it's helped me with my anxiety. It's helped me to move through certain situations and say, okay, this is what needs to happen. And these feelings aren't real. They're a product of a past, um, like an attachment to historical emotions or historical feelings. And that's one of the points that I wanted to drive home today. Sometimes you're, not sometimes, but usually it's your attachment to your historical feelings that costs you your blessings. It costs you to get off of your path in life because you're so attached to what you've done before that when an opportunity comes to move into a newer space, an even better space, you decline. You say, oh, well, I want to do that, but I've got to do this first. And once I've done that, then sure, I can move along. But you don't look at that opportunity and say, I might not get this chance again. But you look at something that you want to be attached to, something that maintains an old historical narrative, and be like, okay, I'm going to go with that one. I'm sure where that one's going to lead, even if it's going to lead to my demise. I'm sure of it. And like Chief said, sometimes you got to do it scared. You're not always going to be ready. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be ready. So expect to not be ready to move forward. But moving forward into that new space and existing in that space with integrity and character is what's going to allow you to stand up straight, even though it seems like it's a new level of gravity that's in there. It's like it's heavier. The Brother Zach said that's why some things at the bottom of the ocean look so dang crazy under immense pressure. Exactly. Exactly. It's like those zombie movies. They've been underground for so long. When they finally emerge, they're like crooked. The spine is bent. They're doing the thriller. So yeah, it's very important to understand and identify all of the players on the board, and you have to be able to trust that the players on the board who are on the board need to be there. And like Chief said, sometimes people just trust their own process of self-sabotage. Peace, Jaguar Olmec. Jaguar Olmec says, Tonio, salute, gang. Much respect. Salute to the chat. Oh, peace, peace, peace. Um, yeah, so I'm going to open up another slide, which is basically the next page. And let's see, the subconscious, let me wait till that moves. The subconscious mind determines our intrapersonal relationships and intelligence that we exhibit within. Intrapersonal relationships are relations that we govern internally. So for instance, we are made up of many contrasting interior communities, such as our ego, our drive, spirit, mind, feelings, etc. Each ingredient works with each other, hand in hand, to holistically maintain health and wellness. So you can imagine if one of those if one of those constituents are out of whack, or it's focused on like disproportionately, you're going to have the other constituents pulled from their proper and aligned and upright position, and they're going to lean over, almost like if you stick your leg out too far from your body, the rest of your body is going to follow, especially if you're standing up. So that's very important. He goes on to say the subconscious mind determines the proportional distribution of each element expressed. And again, this is where that double-edged sword comes in, because your subconscious mind can keep balance by putting each of your interdependent components into proper functioning through non-subjective perspective. That non-subjective is important, because if you do things subjectively or from a subjective perspective, then you may function from a space you're not supposed to be functioning from, based on what that incoming intelligence or that incoming information or those incoming signals may be giving to you, and you might be interpreting them wrong. Someone might say good afternoon, but if you've been having a rough dawning so far, what do you mean good afternoon? What's so good about it? You know what I mean? So it may come from the wrong place if it's not objective. So the subconscious mind can keep balance by putting each of our interdependent components into proper functioning through non-subjective perspective, or the subconscious mind can emphasize certain components of our character disproportionately to maintain a historical narrative. Of course, I gotta go to the next slide now. Okay, here we go. To maintain a specific historical narrative. For instance, when situations happen in our lives, oftentimes we lean towards left brain thinking, that logical side of our minds, or right brain thinking, or the subconscious reactionism. So the reality is we should be using all of those components of our cognition in order to process our life experience. So your left brain thinking, of course, deals with the logical and the rational side. The right brain thinking deals more with your abstract thought, your artistic thought, your emotional thought, and emotional intelligence. And then your subconscious is going to react based on the information that you feed it. All right. So when we use the gumption, oh, my bad. The reality is we should be using all of these components of our cognition in order to process our life experiences. When we use the gumption of the rationale of left brain thinking, it is still proving whatever the subconscious mind has given it. If our subconscious mind is full of fear, then logic and even pragmatic thinking will only confirm and support our underlying fears. Even if we come from a left angle, using abstract perspectives, we we will still be using our creativeness and fluidity only to conform to the plan of the subconscious mind, which is very, very, very critical to understand, because no matter what you use, the example I gave earlier, I'm afraid of locking my keys in the car. So my logic is going to say, okay, well, if I pull the key out and I'm looking at the key as I close the locked door, then there's no way I can lock my key in the car. Or the logic can just say, what are you talking about? You just pull the key out of the car. Just go get what you got to get and do what you have to do. You know what I mean? So if you're not careful, if you're not paying attention to who's on the playing field, then you can actually get hurt. You can actually hurt yourself, which is more likely. Let me scroll up in the chat as I move the words out of my face. Okay, there we go. So scroll up. Okay, so Ia Sequoia says, we don't want to face ourselves. And when some light is shed on our sea monsters, then that's when you really see those ugly faces. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen people, their faces like contort when you say something that touches a nerve. And as far as they're concerned, they have a poker face on. So you might say something to someone, you might be speaking to someone, you might say, listen, I'm going to move into this space amongst men. You are with me. You might be talking to your lady, you're with me, and you need to keep quiet and listen and pay attention. And the woman might be like, what you talking about? If I want to talk, I'm gonna talk. Like she might not say it out loud, and she would perceive that as being respectful. I'm just gonna hold it in, I'm not gonna respond. But I can see it on your face. It's written all over you. You don't like, there's such a thing as body language. You know what I mean? So my father would always tell me that, like, because I used to be very quiet when I was younger. I still am. And my father would always say, it doesn't matter how quiet you are, I can see everything on your face. And I have to be careful to monitor that. So yeah, Sequoia, that's very important to know as well. Okay, so let's just read in the chat. But yeah, if you're not careful, you can be informed by something that might not even be you. You might have taken in something that doesn't really, reflect your vision, right? And your vision is where you're supposed to be putting that trust, not your vision, but the vision that the creating attention to that and trusting that. But if you allow worry and all of the trash talk to creep in, then it's very easy to get knocked off track, because it's a sustained effort. It's not like, okay, I'm on track now, and no matter what, everything's going to be okay because I'm on track and nothing's going to challenge my on trackness. No, it's a sustained effort. You're always going to be tested. You're always going to be tried by your environment, especially if you're in an environment that's toxic or that's not of your community. You're not around people of your same ilk. So Naya says, my body language and facial expressions have always spoken louder than my voice. Right, that's good. Hopefully you've grown in the right direction. All right, so this level of internal regulation can seem like a gargantuan task, right? Because you're not functioning and operating in the community. If you're not functioning and operating in the same community, then when you have wise counsel around you, even though they're giving you good food, they're giving you good advice, you're not really able to take it in because that rock, that boulder is in the way, and they can't get through it unless they shock you. Sometimes you have to be shocked out of your hysteria. Like someone may, I don't know, see something, like we use the elevator example again. You might hear something ding in the kitchen, and it may remind you of elevators. Like you might hear the oven go off and ding, and it might remind you of elevators. So now you try to fight everybody in the kitchen, and you gotta like snap that person out of there. Listen, we're not in the elevator, especially with PTSD. Someone may have a memory of gunfire. You know, they might have been traumatized by gunfire, and any loud bang can set them off. And you have to like calm them down and bring them back into a balanced space. Yeah, Alderay says we want our logical mind, creative mind, and subconscious mind all working in unity with one another. Mind, heart, words. Right, exactly. Um, Sister Deidre says we start finagling and not being content with timing and process of the promise. Exactly. And that's when, like Chief says, we start coming up with our own um yeah, so we start trying to create our own reasoning and our own promises to ourselves without really staying on track. Brother Zach says someone giving a gift of a word that one will take in and accept as their own without examining it is so dangerous. Yeah, yeah, you've got to be able to examine what's coming in, and um, that actually brings me back to that actually brings back to mind. I think Chief, I can't remember what it was. I don't know if it was the Jim Kelly segment, but it was one of the segments where Chief was speaking about body consciousness. And if you don't have that body consciousness, like if you're in he used martial arts as an example, if you're not aware of your own body and positioning, you'll be less aware of your opponent's body and positioning. So if I know exactly where my hands are, where my legs are, because I've been studying and practicing and drilling myself to perfect my technique, then I might be so focused on where I'm putting my leg, or if I'm holding my hands correctly, then I don't see a fist coming straight at me. And even if I see it and dodge it at the last second, they have me off balance now. And now I'm in problems. Now I'm in trouble. So yeah, it's good to organize your internal space, organize your internal community, set everything into motion towards your vision, and anything anomalous to that will stand out to you. You'll know when you shouldn't take a certain road or a certain turn. Chief says, "Yeah, all right, Naya, you talk some things out of your mouth too." Okay, I'm not getting in that one. You do know what Chief is talking about. Your precious says those triggers are something to dissect. Exactly. We must understand the observer and how it could dictate our auto responses. Right. Jaguar Olmec says discipline. Exactly. You're gonna need that discipline. Alex Lagon. Peace, Alex. Peace, Alex Lagon. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. Yeah. Wise words. Brother Zach says, would it be like watching a movie where you watch it but not get absorbed into it? Yeah, because you can. Movies are designed to invoke a state that's called the suspension of disbelief, right? Where I know that the dogs don't fly, but if I can create a story and a history, even if it's a fictitious history of dogs always being able to fly, and somehow they lost the ability to fly, and then this random dog is the chosen one who brings back the ability of dog flight, then I'm gonna sit there and get absorbed in it because I'm not analyzing it. You know, like you always have that one person picking apart the movie while everyone is just trying to enjoy it. Yeah, it's sort of like that. So Chief says, let's see, what session did I use martial arts as an example? You know, I told you they clean. I didn't forget any, but they're all one long video podcast to me. Kashia, everybody's trying to find that segment now. Um, yeah, please be sure to like the videos, subscribe to the channel, share the videos. Um, Yeah, support the movement. So what was I saying? Yeah, being aware of where you are and body positioning, mental positioning, emotional positioning is key to moving through the world with a sense of surety and confidence because you know where everything is. And the reason why that's so crucial is because sometimes external forces will try to get you to move the way that they move, and that may take you off of your path. So you have to be confident enough to say, no, I'm good. That's not really where I'm going. Or they'd be like, oh, yeah, ride with me. I know where we're going. And you might be like, nah, this is my stop. There's there's a book called The Madman by Khalil Gibran, and it's just a collection of short proverbs. And one of the proverbs, which was one of my favorites, was the person was on a pilgrimage to the holy city, right? And on this pilgrimage, he meets someone else who says he's going there as well. So he's like, okay, we can walk together. And the guy was like, well, actually, I can show you how to get to the holy city in one day and one night. And the guy was like, all right, cool, let's ride. And 3 days and 3 nights later, they still hadn't gotten there. And when he asked about it, he said, the man had gotten angry with me because I had allowed him to mislead me. So, yeah, sometimes people say they know the way just because they want to say something, or they want someone to follow them, or they want someone to believe them because maybe they don't believe in themselves. He was actually angry because the guy trusted him, right? Trust. Trust is important. Um, Sequoia says, I believe it was the command that they encouragement. Oh, give thanks, Chief. So this leads me to good counsel, right? You have to have people around you that are able to give you good counsel. You need people who know you, they know the vision that's been implanted in you, they know where you're going, and they're going to, like Chief said in that Enjoy Your Life segment, he was saying that you've got to be able to surround yourself with people who can always keep you on track and keep you on path and remind you of the vision and the promise that you're moving with. Otherwise, you can get off track. You can lead yourself off track, just like some people shouldn't be left alone with their own minds because they've taken in so many things that seek to dissuade them from going along their path or that they've taken on as distractions from their path. And they don't really want to acknowledge that they've willingly engaged in distractions, that they start making excuses for them and they try to keep them, as a part of their internal community when obviously they don't have the same, they're not from the same ilk or the same cloth that that vision is cut from. They don't enhance it, they're just there. Similar to the fig tree that Yahushua basically made to wither. It's like it wasn't bearing any fruit. Why would you have a tree in your garden if it doesn't bear any fruit? It's blocking the way for other trees that can bear fruit, that can be beneficial, and it's probably sucking the life from other trees in the surrounding area. So you don't want that to be there. Brother Vermont says that's why your stance and structure is the foundation of movement. Exactly. Baba Anwar says it's like painting. You don't know how exactly it's going to look, but you know what you're going to paint. Right, right. I've experienced that on various different occasions, especially like talk about vision, especially on those days where I don't know why I went to sleep early. I'm late that night, super late, and I wake up like 2, 3 a.m. Like I need to paint something because it's inside of you. It has to get out. So you've got to be obedient to that, even if your schedule is a little off for that day. There's something that's speaking, and you need to be able to listen and trust what it's saying, right? So in the absence of good counsel, life will sometimes have to shock you. Like if you don't have anyone around you to like pull you to the side and be like, "What are you doing? This isn't the path that you are on. This isn't what you just told me that you were shooting towards. This isn't what you asked me to help me with. This is completely different than what you were supposed to be doing. So what are you doing? Like sometimes you don't have people to pull you to the side and sort of chide you like that. So life has to do it. Life has to shock you out of your hysteria. It has to shock you out of your attachment to your emotions. I'll never forget. There's a friend that I had in high school. Basically, we'll call him L. And he had this disagreement with this guy Jay, and they were talking. L had a bad temper. I haven't seen him in a few years, but in high school he had a bad temper. Like everybody knows, once you get him started, it's like a pit bull. Like sometimes you have to squirt a pit bull with water. And if you, oh, give thanks for the plug, Chief. Jaguar Almex says great conditions for a progressive life definitely helps, but you still have to choose the right environment and community. Exactly. You can grow up in the best of conditions, you could grow up around a wealthy family, but the community might be corrupt, corrosive, like it may not fit where you need to be. Like Chief always said, where you're born is not necessarily where you're supposed to stay. It's just your starting point and your launch pad. So Lance, oh man, I said his name. Anyway, it's a million Lances. Anyway, I'll keep Jay a secret. His name is common too, but I'll keep going on him. L. L basically was getting upset with Jay, and he started to like ramp up, and everybody's like, "Here it comes!" It's like, "Yo, man, calm down, calm down." He's like, "No, because this guy over here," and like he's going off, and in the middle of his tirade, like he usually doesn't like swing on you or nothing unless you show that you want to fight, but. Jay was calm. He was humble. He was like, "Listen, I don't want to fight you," and L was like, da, 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 like going off like a machine gun. And then all of a sudden you just hear splat because we were outside on the park and this was after school. And I hear splat. And everybody was like, what's that noise? Because L just stopped in his tracks. So it was just like, what happened? And then we looked at his shirt and it was like, a pigeon had left him a present on his shirt. So he had to stop and everybody just started laughing like even L, like he couldn't hold it in because it was so random. It just it fell out of the sky, literally. Like bird dropped landed right on his shirt, and he was shocked. He had to stop and acknowledge what was happening because we were trying to calm him down. We were telling him, it's not that serious. He didn't want to listen to us. So then the creator had to send him a reminder, like, calm down. And sometimes that shock is what we need. It's what we need to realize that we're not balanced. We're not on point. We're not as righteous as we think we might be. And our anger or our hurt or disappointment might not be as righteous or as accurate as we may think it is because we don't know what players are on the board. We don't understand the full situation. So what we're acting upon is not knowledge. It can't be knowledge. We barely have all of the information. So what it is it's your emotions, it's your feelings that's informing you, and that's what trips you up. So sometimes life has to like let you know, listen, you need to calm down. And there's a video clip that I wanted to play as well, and I have to give a little bit of background. I got to tell you the story, but go for the ride. Um, and this is basically from a video game series that I like. At least the part three was the game that I played and I really liked it. It's called The Witcher. You might recognize it from the Netflix adaptation with Henry Cavill as the lead. And basically, a Witcher is, in a nutshell, they're paid to slay monsters and break curses, right? That's their job. They've been mutated from humanity into basically a person that looks human, still looks human, usually have like slit eyes or cat eyes. Um, and they go around from place to place, and the way they earn their living is if a village has a monster problem or someone has a curse, then they would call a witcher would come through, say what's the problem, basically like a spiritual detective, and they figure out what the issue is, solve the problem, get the money, and move on. Because they have a code of neutrality, so they don't get too emotionally invested in people's problems. Just what's the issue? Let me solve it. Give me my coin, and I'll be on my way. Um, which is relevant to what we're talking about here, because it's very hard for witches. They try to cheat you. They may they always look at you funny because you're different, and that world is rife with us other rhetoric. This is set in like the Middle Ages. So with this particular segment of this game, that's similar to Supernatural. I've never watched that show. I always meant to check it out, but anytime I see more than 5 seasons, I'm like, nah, I don't have the time for it. But yeah, and this particular mission on the game, um, well, on the mission prior to this, there's a where should I start? There's a continent that you travel to called Skellige, and Skellige is basically based off of I want to say Scottish culture and Viking culture. Like they combine the two. Go for the ride, right? So it's Scottish culture and Viking culture meshed into one, and basically they go by very old traditions. So a chieftain in this section of the world is called a jarl, right? And there's a jarl who's an old friend of the Witcher, whose name is Geralt, and he basically asked Geralt for a favor because the king of that area just died. You have kings, and then you have a jarl that governs each island in that country, and the Jarl is basically the chieftain, and he asked Geralt to go and help his two children because everyone's now choosing the new king. And the way that happens is each of the candidates for the kingship have to perform a great feat to prove their worth as a king. Because if we have a big problem, I need to trust that you're able to you're actually able to solve it. Like Chief had that segment few years back on credibility, credibility versus trustworthiness, and you're basically establishing your trustworthiness, right? And the issue that each of the children faced was the son wanted to travel to an island that was now deserted. It wasn't inhabitable because there was a giant that was living there and it was killing anyone who wanted to habitate the land. But the daughter's story, whose name is Saris, Saris had a different objective in mind. She was convinced that a Jarl from a different territory was actually cursed, like he was being haunted, and she wanted to help him out in some kind of way. Because her thing was, if we can unite all of the Jarls, then Skellige will be a stronger country, and if Skellige is a stronger country, then they'll be able to, repel attacks from invading forces and things like that, right? Again, you're merging all of these intrapersonal components and you're making sure that they can work together to make yourself a stronger being. That way, when attacks come from the outside or the trash talk comes, you know how to deal with it. You have a unified. So the way that Ceres wanted to help this Jarl was she first went to visit him to see how he was. And when she saw his mental state, his mental condition, she determined that he must be haunted, and I need to go to his childhood home to where he grew up. So everybody in that area was basically like, nah, that house is haunted for sure. Right? If they had any doubts about the Jarl, whose name was Udalric, if he isn't haunted, I know for sure his house is haunted. The place where he grew up is haunted. Nobody goes there. It's in the mountains. And she basically goes up to investigate the space because she has a plan based on his history. But the Zach says, right, and the library card is no different than a credit card. It's just the trust that one has put into one over the other or something like that. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Don't move to something like that. Don't put to something like that. That's true. It's right next that, right? So Jaguar Almec says, I'm pretty sure y'all or some have watched Lovecraft Country. It's a good show. I haven't seen the show. I'm sort of familiar with Lovecraft's works because I read a few summaries of his works, but even that had like a certain spin on it, based on the subconscious of the person who's given the information, right? So yeah, so back to Sarah. She goes up to the house, and when Geralt comes to help her out, basically he's like, "Where's Sarah?" So he goes to the Jarl who she stayed with, and the Jarl is talking to his councilman, right? Talk about having good counsel around you. So he's talking to his council, and his council said, um, Udalric isn't well right now, but if you're looking for Cirrus, she went up to the haunted house, to the Jarl's childhood home on the mountain. I told her not to go because I know that place is haunted. So Geralt goes to investigate, and he actually finds Cirrus passed out on the floor. So after he takes her outside and wakes her up, she's like, "What happened?" He's like, "I don't know. I went into the house and I saw you, passed out on the floor." And she was like, Brockvar. He's like, "What?" Say the sword, the ancestral sword of his clan, because each clan had an ancestral sword that was passed from the father to the eldest son, and that symbolized the passing of authority from father to son. So I would also urge you to check out that segment on authority, right? So basically, the story as she has to tell Geralt is when Udalric and his younger brother Aki were young boys, they kind of butted heads over who should get the sword. And one day, their father gave the sword to Aki and not Udalric, even though Udalric was the eldest. So Geralt comments that he's like, "Oh, that's kind of an insult in these lands." And Ceres was like, "Yeah, it was such an insult that Udalric broke a sacred law, which was he openly questioned his father, and his father couldn't stand for it. So as his punishment, which I use to put into perspective when I think about punishments that I received, man, as his punishment, he was tied to a pile out at sea, and he was tied like up to his waist. The water came up to his waist. So that pile is just like the wooden log that they drive down into the sand, for building a dock or something like that. So there's this pile out at sea, and Udalric was tied to it waist deep in water for 3 days to think about what he did, right? So next time you think about the time you got sent to your room, yeah, think of that. So after his punishment ended, Udalric and Aki went out to see the fish because, as it was a part of their culture, people would usually go on fishing trips to cure certain things. Like they believed that the sea was in their fish, and it also provided them with ships to raid whenever they would go out on raids, right? That's where the Viking piece would come in. And basically, I'm not sure if, I don't know, Brother Low or Chief can help me out. I'm not sure if, it was part of Scottish culture to go out and raid people. But yeah, I'll leave that to you guys to put in the chat. But yeah, they went out to sea, and basically it was supposed to mend their relationship. But sadly, a storm broke out, and while Udalric was tending to the sails, Aki fell overboard, and he couldn't hear his brother crying for help until it was too late. So this is what Brother Zach says. Brother Low knows. Yeah, I bet he does. So yeah, well, Aki drowns. Aki drowns at sea, and people had it in their mind that it must have been Udalric that either threw him overboard or he might have hurt him and chose not to rescue him because of the situation that happened before they went out to sea. Yes, Michael K. Williams keeps getting put inside of the same ritual. Chief, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about. Must be something in the chat. But yeah, Aki drowns, and everybody thinks that Udalric was responsible, but they don't say anything. Because saw what happened to Udalric when he spoke out loud, right? Oh, Chief says yes, that was a Viking ritual. They would tie them to the stakes and let the high tide handle them. Okay. Well, as far as punishments goes, I wouldn't have thought of that one. Brother Lowe says, man, let's not talk about Lovecraft Country. I'm tired of people hyping it up, and it's so insulting. Okay, I haven't seen it, and I probably won't see it. And when I saw it, I was like, I'm not gonna watch this. The summaries were enough for me. I might check out the books once in a while, but I don't like to look at adaptations without seeing the source material. Yeah, so what I was gonna say was, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so everybody thought that Ulrich did it, and after a while, Ulrich started hearing voices, right? Which he thought was the voices of the gods. So everybody thought, Ulrich is the chosen one. So, but the whole point of that story was Ceres believed that it was his brother Aki, Ulrich's brother Aki, that haunted him. And it's not the voice of the gods that speaks through him, but his dead brother, trying to get revenge. So her plan was to get Brokvar, the ancestral sword, and take it to Aki's grave and, leave it there. That way the haunting would stop. Of course, Geralt immediately pokes hole in her theory, like, okay, if he died at sea, why would he haunt the house? Right? Why wouldn't he just haunt the place at sea? Why wouldn't he drown victims out there? But he's like, anyway, I'll help you out. So she was like, I gotta get the sword. He's like, nah, you ain't going nowhere. You're still dizzy. You're still weak. I'll go inside, get the sword, then we'll go and see Udalric together, right? Because that's what he came to do. He came to help her with her quest. So they get the sword, go to see Udalric, and explain the plan. And Udalric, like, he's still hearing what he thinks is the voice of the gods. And he's like, oh, the gods won't be pleased with that. That will make the gods angry if you went out and did that. But Geralt is like, really? Like, are the gods of Skellige that cruel that they'll be angry at you for trying to make peace with your dead brother? That doesn't make any sense. So he's like, anyway, I'll tell you what, I'll sail out and I'll leave the sword where Aki died. And basically, it doesn't matter by whose hand the sword is returned as long as it's returned to him, seeing that his father gave it to him. So Udalric agrees. He's like, all right, cool. Safe travels. So Geralt goes out, does what he has to do, comes back, and he sees that Udalric poked his own eye out. So he's like, what's going on? So Ceres, of course, she's shocked, and she's there like holding her face, and she can't believe it. And Geralt is like, what's going on? What's this about? And she's like, we thought it would be better, but it turns out it's worse. Like, Udalric just poked his own eye out. And he asked Udalric, why did you poke out your own eye? He was like, why did you poke out your own eye? And Udalric was like, it was the will of the gods. They demanded a sacrifice. And he was like, do the gods always demand that you hurt yourself as payment? And he was like, yeah. And he said, what happened exactly when I left? He said, sleep came over me, so I went into the bedroom. And he's like, do they always speak to you in your dreams? He's like, yeah, they always speak to me. He's like, what did they say exactly? And he was like, the god said, you vile wretch of a man, why didn't you go out, sail out to apologize to your brother yourself? You're a coward. This goes back into the trash talking piece, right? So it's like, you coward, you should have gone out there. Now you have to do this as a torment for your sins. You have to poke your own eye out. And that's what gave Geralt the clue, like, this isn't the voice of the gods. So he looked at his shadow, and he actually saw a different type of, it was a shadow that was different from Udalric's. So Geralt talks to Ceres. He's like, can I talk to you for a minute? And I'll put up an image right now, but basically the type of energy or the type of spirit or demonic spirit that they were dealing with was something called a Haim, right? So I'll show you an image of it. So this is a Haim, right? And what the Haim basically does is similar to the Zmora, because the Witcher is based off of the monsters in the Witcher, and the creatures are based off of Polish folklore. The writer of the books that the game and the Netflix series is based on is named Andrzej Sapkowski, and he basically took a lot of Polish folklore and like, injected steroids into them, and now we have this wonderful series, right? So this particular spirit is very similar to what the Polish would call Zmora, but Germans would call it a mare, right? And what a mare does is it sits on people's chests while they're sleeping, and it oppresses them with bad dreams, right? So if someone went through an experience with a mare, they would say, "Oh, I rode the nightmare last night." So that's where we get the term nightmare, right? So when you're dealing with a Haim, Chief was saying basically there's only two ways, peace Esme, there's only two ways to banish a Haim or kill a Haim. And none of them they only exist in theory because these Haims are so rare and so dangerous that people either fall victim to them and the Haim goes on its way, or the Haim basically it kills it basically kills its victim. Like it's very rare that someone would see it, know what it was, and then get rid of it. But what a Haim does is it attaches itself to guilt that exists within a person's subconscious, and it starts to amplify that guilt and feed on it while it's amplifying it. And that's how it sustains itself. So it's a very parasitic demon. And this what makes it so dangerous. This what makes it this is what makes it relevant to what we're talking about today, right? So the only way that you can kill a Haim is to either trap it in its lair with the afflicted individual and force it to show itself and then kill it, or you can trick the Haim. And the way that you trick a Haim is you basically make your guilt greater than the guilt of the person who's being afflicted. But you have to trick yourself while you're tricking the Haim, which is why it's so difficult and why it's never really been done on such a common level that someone would say, okay, this is how you kill a Haim, right? So basically, the person who is going to be the bait for the Haim, they can't know that they're in on the trick. So if I don't know if Sister Kashia and Brother Zach were trying to kill a Haim that was attached to Brother Chris. If Sister Kashia comes up with the idea of how to trick the Haim, and Zach is supposed to be the one that the Haim goes to, even if they agreed to trick the Haim together, Brother Zach can't know Sister Kashia's plan because the Haim would sense that he's not truly guilty and it wouldn't take the bait. So now the clip that I'm going to play for you is basically how that plays out with Geralt tricking the Haim. And I want you to pay attention to Ulrich's state of mind after the Haim leaves him. So I'm going to play this clip. And usually when you play a clip, a person's voice is muted. So I'm going to play this clip for you. And then we're going to come back and discuss it. Okay?
Geralt!
Come up with anything?
Yes, I have a plan. One that just might work.
Can I get any details?
You've got to wait for me here. I won't be long.
Anything else?
Said yourself, you can't know the details. So no, nothing else. You simply gotta trust me.
Hope you know what you're doing.
So do I. So, can we start?
I'm ready.
All right, I'll be back soon. In the meantime, get a fire going in the oven.
Over there! She's running to the old house! Grab her!
Take him. You must put him in the oven. Trust me.
Take care not to hurt the child. Give me the babe.
In the oven. Throw him in the oven.
Why? Aki.
The Witcher committed no crime. You'll find neither despair nor guilt here. Only shock and relief. You've been tricked. You must go.
It's over.
Over?
We tricked the Heim. It thought I'd killed your child, abandoned you to haunt me, feed on my conscience.
But when it saw the babe was whole, unharmed, it had to go. You're free, Jarl.
Free?
The Heim's gone, so are the voices that tortured you. Let's get out of here.
What's happening? My head's spinning. I'm spinning in a maelstrom.
Geralt, you said it was over.
That's just fatigue. In time, his mind will return to normal.
What? What will I do now?
You'll be fine. Key is to not give in to self-pity.
I feel as if someone's torn something from me.
That's normal. The Heim was a parasite. Bonds between parasites and hosts can be strong. That's why you feel empty now. Give it a few days, weeks, you'll be fine.
Thank you. I think. Farewell.
I'll go with him. He seems confused.
Good idea.
Okay, so Chief said this is why children need CBT. Yeah, so for those of you who are asking, that shadow was yeah, Brother Zach, this is a long way from Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah. Some of you were asking, I know Sister Moksha was asking, what's that shadow? It's feeding on another host then. Yes. The shadow is what I was speaking about just now, the Heim. And basically what it does is it feeds on the guilt of individuals. So when the Heim thought that Geralt was guilty about killing the baby, and those two guys too, they didn't say anything about them, which I thought was messed up. It's like the Witcher committed no crime. Just two dead bodies on the floor. But but I digress. It was a Heim, and when it saw that it had nothing to feed on, it basically had to go. It died because it had no host, and it's a parasite. Yeah, it was one of the best one of the best games I played on that console, Brother Low. But I'm a stickler for adventure games and just exploring different worlds and learning different lore. And yeah, it's a video game, but it looked like it looked like a movie. But yeah, with the Heim, once it gone away. Oh, and if you're wondering how they did it with the baby, there's a latch on the opposite side of the oven. Um, so it's almost like a second door. So as soon as Carol put the baby in the oven, before the baby even felt any of the heat, Sarah had the councilman here that you saw come out with the baby. He pulled the baby out from the other side, but Gerald couldn't know until the Heim was sure that he was guilty. So that's how they tricked the Heim, and that's how they killed it. So she says, "Let me stick to Tetris." And what basically happened there was Ulrich was in a daze because he was so attached to his guilt for so long. Like you saw, he named his son after his dead brother. So that was a residual of that guilt that he felt for not being around to save him. After a while, Heims used typically try to get their hosts to mutilate themselves. And I thought what was very interesting about that, I thought, and what it reminded me of was when I was younger in school, and I think I shared this on one of the Sabbath calls, but basically you would get punished along the whole class would get punished if the teacher couldn't determine guilt. Like if the teacher left the class and was like, everybody stay quiet, don't make any noise. I'm going to the office. I'm coming right back. If I come back and meet any noise, I'm going to punish whoever's talking. So typically, how it goes is teacher leaves the room, goes to where they have to go. The second that door latch clicks, everyone in the classroom has a conversation. I don't know where they pull these things to say from. I usually used to stay to myself because we moved around a lot and I didn't grasp the art of making friends yet. So I always used to stay to myself, rarely spoke. And whenever the teacher came back and met the classroom full of noise, as soon as they opened the door, everybody would be quiet. Like the teacher couldn't hear them. Because the teacher couldn't see them, they couldn't hear them, right? That always used to annoy me. What annoyed me even more was I used to get punished for speaking when I wasn't speaking. So now I realize that there's a certain psychological effect that has on a person when they're continuously punished for a crime that they're accused of that they know they didn't commit, but they don't have I didn't have the language or the authority to argue with that teacher. So psychologically, after a while, you start to blame, it actually becomes conceivable that you deserve to be punished, right? Which is like very sinister because you carry that into different environments. Like I said, when you're in a work environment and you start acting the way you act in that work environment in other environments, but because you internalize how it operates, which is very sinister. So it's very she says, don't feel no way, Naya. My children were crying, laughing 2 years ago, literally because I was looking for the joystick for a game. I'd be upset. Right, see, my father tried to play video games with us when we were younger. He was getting kind of good at Street Fighter, but he would always do this thing where if he wanted the character to jump, like he would move the controller, like jump, jump, and we would always laugh at him. So, but it's a very sinister type of thing when you basically um, accept that trash talking, that the Heim was doing with Ulrich and convincing him to mutilate himself because he injured his hand. You saw his hand wrapped up and blood was still on it, and he poked out his own eye. And it would have, when Geralt walked in the room the first time, the Heim was trying to convince him to take off his own arm. So he was in a very dangerous position. Now, should um, should you allow yourself to exist in those environments, not longer than you should have, but we're in such a condition or such a state. I also talk about Nintendo and stuff, video games. But sometimes our condition and our state of mind is so warped by the environments that we allow ourselves to be saturated with, that we carry some of those values that came from that environment, sick or healthy, and we impose them on ourselves long after we've left the environment. So that brings to mind a quote from a Buddhist story where two monks were walking, and monks aren't allowed to touch women. So there's this river, and there's this pregnant woman who can't really cross the river. And first of all, why are you walking by yourself by a river? But anyway, I don't think she was pregnant, but it was something that prevented her from crossing the river. So one of the monks just picked her up, carried her across the river, and put her down. So the monks were walking together, and his friend almost didn't want to address it, but he was like, "Listen, man, you just picked that woman up. Like, are we gonna ignore the fact that you just touched that woman?" And he was like, "Listen, I put that woman down the second we crossed the river. You're still carrying her. You see what I'm saying? Because brother Zach said can't be a monk then. But yeah, you're still carrying her in your mind. And that's what happens when we leave some of these environments. They create such a stain on our minds because we usually stay in those environments longer than we should because of our own attachment to our historical narrative. We carry those places in our minds long after we've left them. And that prevents us from functioning properly in new spaces. So again, you've got to monitor who's on the playing field. Got to keep a journal, and you've got to keep good counsel around you, because that's going to help you to remind you of who you are, what you are, and which vision and promise you've been given. You see, so that's really the bulk of what I wanted to touch on today. Oh, another point that I should mention is Ceres. She was sure that this wasn't the god speaking to Udalric, because Hjort, the advisor that you saw carrying the baby, he realized that Udalric didn't start hearing these voices until after Aki died. So this was the Heim attached to him for years, just growing and growing and growing based off of a singular moment of guilt. Chief says, Brother Antonio, with these games, would you say eventually the player comes into the foreground of the character's psychosis? Your description of Geralt is very believable as a cognitive model. Well, Chief, with games like this, some of them are very decision heavy, and like you can see the little selections during the video where you have to choose whether or not to trust Ceres, or you have to choose whether or not to throw the baby in the oven. And is Ceres the conscious voice of Geralt? I would say in that situation, not really. She and Geralt went back and forth over how to deal with the Heim, but she was instrumental in getting rid of the Heim in a safe way. Because, like I said, the other way to do it was, and you have the choice of attacking that mission in that way. The other option that you have is to actually take Udalric up to the house, into the bowels of the house, light all of the torches in that room, because Heims hate light. They thrive in the shadow. And you have to basically draw the Heim out of him. The Heim is going to try and attack you because you're the one who keeps lighting all these torches. And because it's drawing its strength from Udalric, the longer you take to kill it, the more it affects the host. And the Heim wouldn't actively try to kill its own host because that's how it sustains itself, but Udalric just might not make it. And to Ceres, tricking the Heim was much better than putting Udalric in mortal danger. So in a way, yes, she was the consciousness. She was the voice of Geralt, but In that mission, in that game, you have very limited exposure to Cirrus. It's a big game, and you deal with many characters, and you actually have to form relationships with them, similar to that movie Surrogates, where you're actually in a virtual environment, and you have to be aware of your character in that virtual environment. Now, in my case, I can take lessons from that virtual environment and apply it to the real world. But danger with those video games, like Sister Kashia says, I see why people play it so much or spend so much time on it. You might get so absorbed in your video game persona that you neglect your own character, which is one of the dangers of being in that game. Dear Precious says, my children used to ask to experience virtual reality, and I told them I had a better game, real reality, grab a board game. They got pissed and stuff, but they stopped asking. Sister Marcia says, trust was so crucial because he had to have initially some sort of guilt to make the Heim leave one host. This scene highlights the need to walk with trust when you're in good counsel. Exactly, because like I said, you have the option to not do it. Even though initially Geralt agreed to do it Cerys' way, you still have multiple points in that mission where you can say, no, I'm going to change my answer and do it the other way. So the alternative to what just happened was you could either say, I want to do it the witch's way and kill it from jump, and you just go straight to the house and do it, or you can choose to do it Cerys' way, and in the middle of that mission, decide not to throw the baby in the oven, but to give it to Udalric, which would spark another cutscene where Udalric punches you in the face because he's so mad, and then he storms off. He points at Cerys and says, "I'll deal with you later," and then he goes off to where he now lives. And then Geralt has to go and convince him to go back into the house, which is it makes for an awkward experience if you're playing the game, and you identify with a character. Chief says she seems like what Alfred is to Bruce Wayne, even though she is his stepdaughter. Stepdaughter. What do you mean by stepdaughter? Actually, Cerys is the daughter of his friend, but I'm guessing there's a context for using stepdaughter, if I'm not seeing. Andrean says, is this considered today's schizophrenia? The term schizophrenia actually means split mind, and a lot of people confuse schizophrenia with multiple personality disorder, which is, you have one personality and then another one that has its own distinct personality. But schizophrenia would just be like your mind is split. Like one side wants to go one way, the other side wants to go the other way, and that confusion causes stress. But I'm not a psychologist, so I don't have I'm not too tight on my psychological terms just yet. Arlene says, that's right, Ear Precious. I had to restrict video games in our home. That usually doesn't work. At least speaking from experience, my brother and I would have restrictions on our gaming time. Like when we were young, maybe 7, 8 years old. And my mother was like, okay, you're not playing this game today. You're going to do something else because you guys spend too much time on the game. So she would take the game and hide it in her room. Of course, my brother, he's more of the thief archetype. He went into the room, found the game, and he was like, listen, Tony, all we have to do is put the game back the way we found it before she realizes that we moved it. So we would play for hours and just listen out. And Cerys is in his stepdaughter. Ciri is actually the daughter of Promise. I think that's who you were talking about. When during the Witcher series on Netflix, Chief, there's an episode where Geralt actually gets a favor, and he's like, I invoke the payment of surprise or something like that. So you got to give me the most valuable thing, something of equal value to you. And immediately he finds out that the lady he just helped out was pregnant. So now he has a daughter, Siri. I think that might be what who you're referring to. But yeah, restricting video games. If those children want to play it, they're gonna play it. Um, Ia Precious says, yes, Ia Sequoia, I have my 10-year-old be the banker and my youth form a partnership and have so many lessons of life via Monopoly. That's good. That's good. Teach them how to deal with money. Kuya. Mr. Kuya said something about choose your own adventure books. Reminds me of those books where you can choose which route you wanted to go in the story. Yeah, I kind of love those books. There's an app. It used to be free. Now it's a paid app, which I can't blame them. But it was called Delight Games, and it had a bunch of stories that you could get lost in. Deidre says, yes, Sister Queer Bisa, choose your own adventure books, right? Sister Kashia says, uh-oh, move. Oh, y'all talking a lot. Okay, Sister Kashia says, Brother Antonio, with these games, would you say eventually the player comes into the foreground of the character? Oh, I guess, yeah, that was Chief's comment. Brother Lowe says, thus why people make money playing video games. Yeah, people make some good money playing these games, especially the beta testers. They make some money. Oh, everybody, everybody loves these choose your own adventure games. Naya says she loves Monopoly. My children don't prefer playing with me. You sound like one of those one of those people who don't take pity on children the first time around. I can kind of get it like that too. Like I'm ruthless when it comes to Monopoly. Yeah, give me everything. Alex Lagan says, thank you for the perspective and wisdom and understanding of life and games. You're more than welcome, Alex Lagan. Aldery says, trust, is that the key word here? Yes, trust is the key word here. Despite the upgrade of the tools used to play the games before, I guess, of conditioning is still present, so much that the player becomes the character. Yeah, you play the game based on, a lot of people choose to play the game based on, their own consciousness and their own, what's in their subconscious. So I typically choose to do things the way I would have done it in real life. Like there's a segment of the game, there's a mission. My brother always teases me because every time he walks past and sees me playing the game, he's like, that's a dark game. And it's like, yeah, I like dark stuff. So there's one particular mission where there's a werewolf and he has a wife. His wife understands that he's a werewolf and he can't stay home at night. Otherwise, he may hurt her. Whereas today she would be like, "Oh, you just trying to sneak out? You trying to see that other girl? Give me no werewolf story. Let me see it." But yeah, there's a section where the lady actually the wife doesn't know. The wife's sister knows, and the wife's sister is in love with the husband. And what she does to try and get the man on her side is she tries to get rid of her sister. So she tricks her sister to go out into the woods where the guy who turns into a werewolf goes. He has his own room out there, cabin in the woods, so that he may at best hurt some wolves or some deer, but he won't kill any people. And she actually tricked her sister to go out there and get killed. So now there's a notice put up for a witcher to come and deal with the problem. And it turns out, you find out what happened and you have the opportunity because she while you're killing the werewolf, she comes in and stops you. She's like, no, don't kill him. I love her. And he's like, what are you doing here? And she was like, listen, I was the one who tricked your sister to come out into the woods. So you didn't really kill her. She's thinking now she's consoling him, but she doesn't realize like she done messed up. So he was like, I can't love you after that. You forced me to kill my wife. And as the Witcher, you decide whether or not to kill the werewolf and save the woman or just leave him alone. I left her alone. You you started that on you started your own story, so now you got to see that through. So I left her with the werewolf, and he basically kills her. Yeah, dog game, right? So, but yeah, I'm not gonna save you from your own consequences just because it's the right thing to do. You sowed your own, you reap what you sow, right? But that's just me. Um, Sister Kashia says, Sam, my mother called the other day and told me she donated all my books from youth. First I died and then I understood it was time. Let it go. Sheesh. You'll be alright, Kashia. Small books. Um, Brother Zach says, does one being exposed to a game like that too early on in life or opening a chakra too soon cause for trust issues to ensue? I would say the trust issues ensue because you're not really tethered to your vision or you're not aware of your vision. So if you're exposed to a game like that before you understand what your mission or your vision is, then yeah, it could mess you up. Um, but it depends on your contextual environment. It depends on your culture. Some children are exposed to hunting and killing early, like, going out in the woods with their parents at 5 or 6 years old with a gun and killing a live animal and eating it. And it doesn't necessarily mess them up because, oh yeah, Chief was talking about Siri. It doesn't necessarily mess them up because they have good counsel around them. They have a guide to walk them through those things. I grew up playing Mortal Kombat, and you can see that even though I might not go out and be outwardly violent, I sort of, like, you can see the decision I made with the werewolf. I'm not, like, if I think violence is necessary, it doesn't really make me shy. But in the past, I used to be afraid of like confrontation and confronting people. But now it's like 50 cents. You got a problem, no problem. But yeah, trust issues ensue when you're I think Chief spoke about molestation, like when you're molested, your your character, when your essential nature is messed with. It's not necessarily a physical thing exclusively, but someone could molest your mind growing up, and they can, cause you to do certain things or take on certain mentalities that aren't necessarily healthy for you, but it fits their narrative. Like I think during Brother Lowe's breakdown of Redcliffe, he touched on that with some of the consorts and some of the wives of kings. They would try to play political games, sometimes very uh, wicked and shady games, to try and get their children on the throne, because their thing is, if my child rules, then I rule. You know what I mean? So that molestation piece can be very dangerous. Sometimes a video game can do it. Sometimes one's own parents or community or environment can do it. But yeah, Brother Lowe says he's talking about Syria. So yeah, I figured he's talking about Syria. Ceres is Cerys, and she is the daughter of Croc and Crate, who was one of the Jarls of Skellige. And Ciri is, the daughter of Sintra. The Queen of Sintra basically trusted Geralt with Ciri. Actually, Geralt had Ciri thrust upon him because of that what was it? The payment of surprise or something like that. It's the law of surprise, I think it was. Chief says in the book, Ceres is his stepdaughter. Yeah, I think that's Ciri, Ciri, short for Cirilla. She said, I haven't played the game, but I watched half the first season and read the books. Okay, I always wanted to get my hand on those books. Um, yeah, I don't know, it's Siri Chief. Chief says, psychologize it the F up, brother. You're handling it. All right, give thanks, Chief. Give thanks, Brother Low. Sister Kashia says, I'm still looking on more. A lot of comments in there. Okay, Sister Kashia says, I'm still licking my wounds, to be honest. So many memories and adventures in those books. Time to make new ones. Exactly, make new memories. You gotta let go of that history. Chief says, you see how I blend characters once again, Brother Lowe. Brother Lowe did the same thing on Red Cliff. Oh yeah, Chief did the same thing on Red Cliff. Sister Arlene says, I replaced the games with camping and outdoor fun. Good. They still get to play and they still get to experience, something different than just the regular track, go to school, come home, play video games, so that's good. They get to spend time in nature. Kashia says, question from Brother. Oh, okay. I got to that one. Brother Lowe says, what I'm here for, Chief, no problem. Chief says there's a coldness that Geralt has in order to survive, but there are times he does not take money to guilt. This ambiguity is interesting to dissect. Yeah, witches have a code of neutrality. They don't bow before any kings. They don't take political sides. They don't take sides in disputes. They simply do the job and collect their payment and move on. And gotten witches reputation of being completely cold-hearted. Truth be told, because of the process that they go through to become witches, it's called the trial of grasses, where there's a chemical concoction made decoction made from various plants, and it's given to children like around 10 years old or so, and it basically transforms their insides, like it almost liquefies their insides, and their body has to build itself back up based on the process. I'm not too keen on the whole process, but what always comes to mind for me was like a butterfly in a cocoon. Butterfly, the caterpillar completely liquefies and then, restructures itself. And it has to trust that process, right? But yeah, Geralt is cold in some aspects and he's very compassionate in others. And in the game, you get to decide which one you will be. But I'm guessing from the books that he can be pretty cold as well. Brother Lowe says, I'm ruthless with the strategy games. I want to get my money up and resources, then we conquer. All right. I'd like to play a strategy game with you, Brother Lowe. Chief says, if one has trust issues, these sorts of games must be difficult because of the anxiety of so many choices. Yeah, especially because choices in this game are very permanent, and there are some where you can like change your course, but once something is done, it's done. Like you have certain choices that cause people to die, and it's your fault. um, you have some choices where there's no right answer. Um, the two outcomes you're given is one person either loses their mind or they get cursed. And you have to choose whether you allow them to be cursed and they can never be uncursed, or allow them to lose their mind and they have to like go through counseling and therapy. Like some people, and that's what it's like in life too. Some people come to you with questions or asking for help, but they've followed their own vision for so long and their own ideas for so long that they've reaped nothing but calamity in their lives. And then they would come to someone like Chief and be like, okay, fix my life after I completely effed it up. And there's some decisions that are permanent, and a lot of people don't like to acknowledge it until they have to face the reality, right? You have to go through it. And the consequences of your decision. I like that aspect of these games because it makes you really have to pay attention to everything that's going on, every clue. Like I like Sherlock Holmes and like detective stuff. So I like paying attention to what's going on and dissecting it and saying, okay, let me use these bits of information to make a proper decision. Precious mom, Precious says no mercy. They own, they earn the win. Okay, yeah, I know Precious is a little cold. Say I give strategic advice, but no free wins. When they beat me, and they have to, it's so real for them. They party for days and never give me a do-over. Yeah, yeah. It's like when I was younger and I used to play games. Like when my brothers were outside, I would stay inside, like studying the video game, practicing special moves. So if my brother came back, it's like, all right, I got something for you. Hey, Brother Luke says, yeah, I know that part in the game. I don't know what part you're talking about. Sorry, I just got to this comment. Brother Zach says, Chief, I've heard of people not going to restaurants because they have too many choices. Give thanks for that. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I look at a menu and I'm like, what? Where's what I came for? Is that on the menu? No? All right, let's put it back down and walk off. There's too many choices. Some people don't get on with their lives because there's too many choices. Brother Lowe says, I like in the game they got their own version of like the weird sisters in the game as well. Sorry, I like in the game they got their own version of like the weird sisters in the game is way, and you got to make the decision there as well. Weird sisters. I'm not sure which weird sisters you're talking about. Are you talking about the three witches, Brother Lowe? Esme says StarCraft, Age of Empires, Age of Mythology, Warcraft is my area. I'm a PC strategy gamer. Yeah, me too. Empire Earth as well. That's another good one. Never like those kind of games. Thanks for compounding my choices of not playing those type of games. All right, you're more than welcome, Sister Esme. Naya says, LOL, Doc, I am people. Yeah, you gotta make a choice. You gotta make a choice. And those choices are much more easy. They're much easier to make once you have that confidence in your vision and your walk. If you know where you're supposed to be going, having a million roads in front of you is not going to discourage you or intimidate you because you'll intuitively know which path to take. And like I said, I go and look on the menu. If what I need to eat isn't there, then I don't have to browse through and dissect what else is on the menu. It's, oh, they got shark eggs there. I love shark eggs. It's like, but sharks don't lay eggs. What are you talking about? It's like, anyway, they always try to put some fancy stuff on the menu to, intrigue you. Your Precious says, wait, you are you all are still talking about video games. LOL, oops. Well, games in general, you're precious. Notice scholars said, Esme, I'm with you there on those games. Yeah, yeah, I like those strategy games too. Now working on narrowing down food to cook for today. Well, hopefully you pick something that's good for you, right? Something that'll help you to walk whatever path you're walking. Sister Kashia says transitioning from the army to civilian life was rough at first. From a place where choices made for you, parents, then the army, to making your own. Anxiety on high. Yeah, yeah. I remember when I got my first apartment, my parents and I weren't seeing eye to eye, so it's like I'd rather live on my own than be at odds with someone who lives in the same house as me. So I moved out, but it was like so many things that I had to learn to appreciate they were doing. And it's not that I regretted moving out because it forced me to make my own decisions and take care of myself. So that increased my confidence in my ability to live anywhere but it also made me aware that there's lots of things I'm not aware of, and I have to learn to be cognizant of, requirements that you need to live or exist in a certain space, even if it's your own space that you're creating. Chief said, seems Geralt has to do evil, but the choice is the lesser of evils. Yeah, that's what you get. That's what you get a lot from in those games. A lot of it is the lesser of two evils. Would be interesting to learn the emotional effect on the youth who play these games. The virtual experience removes true consequence. Exactly, exactly. There are lots of people who play these games, and like I would walk through a town and I would just go to my objective, and then I would sit down at a friend's house who might be playing the same game, and they're killing every single citizen they see. Like, what are you doing? Then the guards on us. Like, don't worry about the guards. As soon as I go to another city, they're gonna forget I was even there. And so yeah, it's like removal of consequences. Even though there are consequences there, um, we it, these games also tend to separate the decisions you have to make in life from between important decisions and like big decisions and small decisions. And even though they're different in like degree, they're all important. Like the way you place your feet on the ground when you walk is important. The way you open a door is important. The way you walk through the door and close the door is important. Like everything you do is super important. And I think we tend to trivialize the quote unquote small stuff and save all of our energy for what we think are the big stuff. And we lose our opportunity to even get to the bigger stuff because we messed up so much of the smaller things that we have a janky foundation. So everything tends to crumble, and then we wonder why nothing's working out for us. But yeah, that awareness of consequence of actions, that's very important. Um, Sequoia says, I seen an episode on the brain child or brain games where it talked about having limited amount of choices is actually better than having too many choices. I'm not sure how true that is. Well, I would say is true in a sense because you don't get that analysis paralysis where you're so busy at analyzing your choices that the opportunities tend to pass you by. There's a quote that I like from the movie Blow with Johnny Depp, and it's near the end of the movie, and he says, "Life passes you by while you're making grand plans for it," and I think that's true. The less choices you have to analyze, the easier it is to make a decision. And once you've made a decision, you realize either it was the wrong one, and you know what you should do now, or it was the right one, and now that you've made your first step, you now have to build on what you've started, what you've initiated, and start watering the seed you've planted. Even if it's only to realize that you planted it in the wrong place and you have to start over, at least you have the wisdom now from that experience, as opposed to, sitting down and wondering if you should do it or not. And that's a fear of mistakes that's going to happen, that's going to take hold of you. And it helps me a lot with art too, because if I say I want to paint something, like I said earlier, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I gotta paint something. I don't necessarily know what to paint. And if I just put a line on the canvas, I would realize that I've just limited my options. Put another line and limited my options. Like that artistic process is just limiting the options of what this thing can be and forcing it to be like one thing. It's everything when you start. Then you have to chop away different options and cut off different roads until you know, you can feel it out, and the vision gets clearer as you cut off those options. Brother Zach says, hold on, killer. Chief says, yes, Brother Zach, too many choices cause us to compromise on the quality of choice. Restaurants with too many choices are full of frozen stale food. Exactly. Like, where are you keeping all of the raw materials for all of these choices that you're giving me? Your Precious says, yes. and the removal of consequential thinking in games that appear so real sounds quite dangerous for the youth as they navigate the real world. Yeah. You take a game like Call of Duty, where I don't know how many bodies I got in the in the virtual world. But I got millions of bodies in the virtual world. But in Call of Duty, you're basically in the army. You're in the army, but you don't have to worry about getting shot. So you get the best of both worlds. You get to shoot all of these guns. You get to kill all these people. You have 7 or 8 year olds cursing you out like they're grown men online. So yeah, it's crazy. Uh, let me scroll up. Okay, Kashia says, I realized I work better with instructions and direction and was most productive with those constructs, highlighting my need for covering. Yeah. Brother Zach says, makes me think of culture. Which people say it's okay to try some out, not knowing, right, not knowing that it would be full of frozen stale food. Right. Yeah, so they'd be like, yeah, try this out, or try that out. Like they're telling you to try it out because they like how it tastes or how it feels, but they might not be totally respectful of, your willingness to respect your own body and what you put into it. Law of surprise, right? That's what it was, Brother Lowe. Good thanks. Sister Deidre says the connections and tie-ins you're providing are. Oh, good thanks, Sister Deidre. Um, Chief says to Brother Zach's question about early exposure, I would say the use of very adult themes and decisions causes an artificial maturation that makes young people think they're more mature than they are. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, um, my parents and I didn't see eye to eye. Part of it was my problems, and part of it was their problems. Like, there's your side, my side, and the truth. Both of us had parts where we were righteous and we were accused of being wicked, and both sides of instances where we thought we were like the other side thought they were being wicked, but they were actually being righteous. And if you don't have like that proper connection to authority, like passing that sword down, if you don't have that proper connection to authority, you can sort of try and create a pseudo authority, just like how you would try to create your own vision, and you can mess yourself up. It'll take years of life shocking you out of your delusion. Um, he says that process is actually a transgendering of sorts. I'm not sure exactly which process it is. You're typing a lot today. I don't know how you keep up with these comments, Chief. Says, would it start to create a Neverland MJ personality? She says, yeah, I broke it. You fix it. Fix it in a way that I am not accountable. Kept comfortable. And if you don't, then you are the cause of my lifelong dysfunction. Exactly. Yeah. Grow. Right, Baba Anwar. Yeah, man, that's them shark eggs. That's a hot commodity. Steve says, with your first apartment, you appreciate all of the things you thought appeared out of thin air that you have to acquire. Exactly. Dustpan, can opener, hangers, power strips, oven mitts, glass cleaner, um, brooms. Man, there's so many things I had to buy, like dishes, dish trays, the glass that I broke and it just respawned out of nowhere, and I thought it was always there. Yeah. It's a lot of stuff. Exactly, Baba Utu. Life is a magic ritual. Brother Zag, yeah, towels to dry off, towels to bathe with, curtains. There's a lot. Chief says, true, Brother Zach. First few nights, you're just walking around. You're just walking about. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're just walking around the spot, swamping and air drying off. Yeah. Um, uh, Chief says, true, Shamalice. Um, First few nights, you have sheets and garbage bags in the window. Yeah, because we ain't got no curtains. Everybody can see what's going on inside. Shamali says, yeah, and they're never enough. Nope. Kashia says, hated the army, loved my MOS. Oh, MOS's job. Oh, yeah, just about to ask. Peace, Miss Cindy Jones, Private Eye. Just got off the big case. Peace, Gwendini. Brother Lowe says, I hated the army too, but I had to go through it, you know? Yeah, had to go through it. She says, yeah, I do know. I am set for life, Brother Lowe. Yeah, yeah. Brother Chief says, referring to the trial of Grass's process of transforming the child into a witcher, it's alchemical, but there's an underlying theme of transgender. Oh, okay, transgendering. Okay, okay. Um, Yeah, I can see that, especially with the emotional effects that it has on most witches. And in the game, I'm not sure how many exist in the books, but in the game, you get to meet quite a few witches. And if you only saw Geralt, you would think that all witches were like that. But then there's other witches like Lambert, who's more emotional and fiery, and there's Eskel, who's more earthy and calm. Um, there's Letho, who's a psychopath, but he does what he thinks he needs to do. So he's very cruel, and he has a cruel coldness as opposed to Geralt's compassionate coldness and distancing. Um, yeah, Lane says I learned lots of my dysfunctions in the military. Yeah, yeah. And Kashia, Sister Kashia can speak to that. She says, yes, Arlene Adams, and I am an army brat too. SMH, the unlearning from more than one dysfunctional culture is continuously, I guess you're saying it's continual. Brother Lowe says, that's very interesting that you said that, Chief. Kashia says, whoa. I'm not sure what you're saying whoa about. Chief says they also become sterile as a result of the process, so they are recruited going forward. Yeah, yeah. Witches are sterile. Sorceresses in that world are sorcerers and sorceresses in that world are sterile as well because of what they have to go through. I know with the sorceresses they go through an enchantment ritual, which basically they sacrifice their I don't know what to call it, their birthing equipment. And they, oh, my bad, Kashia. Yeah, you know I know how to pronounce your name. But apologies. But yeah, they basically have to sacrifice their ability to give birth, and in return, they're basically made beautiful. There's a lot of the sorceresses who are recruited, at least according to what I've seen in the show, they have lots of physical deformities, or they're orphans, or the parents didn't want them. I know in particular, one of Geralt's lovers, Yennefer, is basically sold for less than the price of a pig. Bought a pig for like, I don't know, I can't remember the price, but let's just say she bought a pig for $30 and she paid $5 for Yennefer, which is, you know, yeah, that's a complex creator on its own. That's a psychological complex right there if I ever saw one. Like my father sold me for $5 and sold the pig at the same time for 30. Yeah, but I think that's all of the comments. Any questions? Does anyone have any more questions? Because it's been like 2 hours and 14 minutes. I didn't think I'd be on this long, honestly. But yeah, does anyone have any questions before we close out? And I'll wait for that. But yeah, just to recap, you've got to monitor monitor your internal environment. You got to make sure you know which players are on the board, and you can check out Chief's segment on how to move in a room full of vultures and sort of not inverted, but yeah, use it on your internal space as well as your external space. I'm sure Chief usually covers both, but sometimes when people think of those things, they usually think of moving on their job or in an environment where they have enemies within, right? So you have to be able to deal with the enemy within. That quote: if you have no enemy within you, then the enemy outside of you can't hurt you. So yeah, Chief says, and that transformation process is down at Kaer Morhen. It's far away and secret. Yeah, yeah. Kaer Morhen is the witch's stronghold, and it's in a beautiful landscape. Really, I really like the way they showed it in the game. I like reading descriptions of landscapes and characters in books as well. I like the detail that the authors put to it. But yeah, man, it was out in nature. You wouldn't be there unless you wanted to go there. Sister Deidre, give thanks, Sister Deidre. Give thanks, E. Sequoia. Give thanks, Brother Zach. Much appreciated. I appreciate you all. Chief says, yes, what are first steps you would advise people to look at to deal with trust issues aside from journaling? Sourcing your trust issues is definitely one of them. Some CBT helps as well, taking baby steps towards trusting. As simple as me trusting myself not to lock the key in the car, and then moving up from there. So taking more and more steps to make myself more vulnerable, because I think most trust issues that I've seen come from, being hurt in some sort of way or betrayed or let down in some sort of way and never wanting to experience it again. So you try to make yourself invulnerable as instead of, going through it, you just try to harden up and you don't allow any blessings or curses to affect you. So I would say that would be the first step towards dealing with trust issues. You have to surround yourself with good counsel, people who have your best interests at heart, people who know what your vision is, and they constantly and continually redirect you to that life purpose, or they congratulate you or give you encouragement when you are moving towards that purpose. So I think the good counsel piece definitely helps out. And like I said, check out the segment that Chief did, the Commander Day segment. I would also recommend it's a segment that Chief did, I think it was 2017, the Undeveloped Personality. The first one, it was a series, but the first one where Chief broke down how to catch a snake without being bitten. That Buddhist proverb, which I really, really enjoyed. And sometimes I remind myself not to get bit by the snake every now and then. So give thanks for that, Chief. Give thanks, Baba Amar. Give thanks, Kashia. Give thanks, Naya. Give thanks, Brother Vermon. Give thanks, Brother Zach. Brother Zach said you also open with trash talking to oneself and watching it, which some also refer to the four agreements and not taking anything personal. How would you say one attacks their personal growth? I would say you attack your personal growth with the path that you were on and connecting to basically either the vision that you've created for yourself or your emotional trauma or historical, your attachment to your emotional history. That definitely stops you from growing, and it causes you to, in in a slick way, miss opportunities. And the reason I say in a slick way is because people try to find a way to blame it on something else. So yeah, I would say trying to finagle your way out of doing the things you need to do can definitely stop you. Brother Lowe says, great. Oh, give thanks, Brother Lowe. Thanks, Sister Manira. Give thanks, Your Precious. Chief says, can we use emotions to guide us to decisions which we can trust? Should our historical experience tell us who and what to trust? No, they should not. Not necessarily, I would say. Like you mentioned in Mind Heart Words, your logical, emotional, and subconscious faculties all have to work in tandem. They all have to work together. And when they don't, your decisions can be lopsided. So I could have gotten what should I say? Oh, you mentioned in the same video on enjoying life, which was on the 16th. You mentioned how you would guide your children, even though they're venturing out on their own. They might be going to the train, and you give them advice like you would say, don't keep your wallet in your back pocket, or if you're gonna pay for your Metro Pass, keep that money in one pocket and the rest of your money separate. So stuff like that. That comes from historical experience. Even if you may not have been pickpocketed, I watched a few pickpocketing movies, and a lot of times they would say never go for the front pocket, always go for the back pocket or bags. So yeah, that's still historical experience, and that historical experience comes from somewhere, though. It comes from a person who might have went through it, or it may come from, in this case, your father or your mother, and you have to be so aware of your own internal community that you can sort of tell how off the other person who may be giving you advice may be, but you can also tell, if you're off or not, if you're being honest with yourself, if you trust yourself enough to, like, for me, I'm not averse, or I try not to avoid saying, like, how can I put this, like, openly speaking about my own flaws, because I trust that they won't be flaws for long. So I know that the creator is moving with me and through me and guiding me on a path. And if I connect to that, then sure, I can use my historical experience to let me know I've been through things and I've gotten through them okay. But also, I don't necessarily have to go through them in a way that causes me pain or trauma, um, just to prove to myself that I accomplished something. I'm not sure if that answers the question, though, Chief. So you can let me know. Here, Sequoia says, "Yeah, I got bit by the snake in that one." Yeah, I remember. Uh, you're more than welcome. Yeah, Andrian and yeah, Arlene, yeah, Tracy. Give thanks for putting the undeveloped personality in the chat. The link is in the chat. Give thanks, Brother Logan. Peace, Brother Logan. Yeah, how you doing? Give thanks, Sister Moxie. Yeah, you're more than welcome. Welcome, Quindy. Like I said, Chief, I don't know if I answered your question thoroughly enough, so you can let me know in the chat. I might have missed a few things, so you can let me know that too. Cause who? Peace, Baba Cruz. How Cruz says, how would a community assist a member that clearly have mental restraints holding them back? Well, within a community, you have people who've known members from childhood, right? I said, well, look what the wind blew in, right, brother Zach? um, but yeah, you have like and the example in the video, at least it was off screen, but Sarah said, "Cure, the counselor, he knew those babies from they were in the cradle, from they were in the crib. He knew Ulrich and his brother Aki, and he could tell, like, or he knew when a certain mental illness starts." Chief said that ain't Bob Cruz. He didn't say the password. um, but yeah, your community will be able to track your growth and development, and your members. There we go. That's your members will. The members of your community will know when something is off, and if they're compassionate and if they watch over you, then they can sort of help you to nip that in the bud. You know what I mean? So if you're in a situation where you're not around a community, you don't have good counsel around you, then oh, there it is. Blessed love. That's the password. um, but yeah, having a community to remind you of who and what you are and what your vision is, they can help you to deal with those mental blockages. Some mental issues are more advanced than others. They take more experience and wisdom and finesse to deal with. And some are simply this person, like, we got to teach them better. So it depends on what the blockage is and who the individual is and what the community is. You know what I mean? Yeah, Papa Cruz is, I'm actually in his house. So I'm probably the one who has to say the password. But yeah, Aldery says, why not? This segment provided a great example of how we reshape how people are going to respond based on past experience. All right, give thanks for that, you Aldery. I saw that segment, but I gotta check it out again. Let's see. Chief says, okay, Bobby Cruz, you're selected doing all the DJing. Nope, that's all me. Me and my lo-fi mix. That's so brilliantly suggested by the sisters who helped me to put this together. Well, the Wi-Fi is on point. Yeah, brother Zach, we upgrading. We in there. Yeah, like I said, we don't mind admitting to our flaws because we're not gonna have them for long. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that's it. Brother Zach said, "Don't let him take your credit." Sister Kashia, give thanks. Yeah, I got nothing else. So if no one has any more questions, you can skedaddle. It's been 2.5 hours. I can't believe it. Time flies when you're online. Okay, Chief, I really understand. You saying you want to do half an hour and then it winds up taking up your whole day. I appreciate it that much more now after doing this. Sister Deidre says, when you move in purpose, everything goes well. Yeah, sometimes things go topsy-turvy before they go well. Yeah, you're more than welcome, sis. I'll give thanks, cuz. Yeah, give thanks. Give thanks to your Sequoia. All right. Busted you, yeah. All right. So that has been our segment for today. Give thanks for all of you who are in the chat. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below, and I'll circle back and check the video periodically, or one of the other brothers or sisters can answer your question. Give thanks to you. You're precious. Peace first and last. Give thanks. The impossible is happening, right? You're just gonna keep commenting. Give thanks, brother Zach. All right, I'm just gonna head out. All right, 2:30 on the dot. Give thanks, everyone. Peace. Enjoy your Sabbath. You're more than welcome, brother Lowell. Peace.